Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor Jim.
I'm Pastor Vicky.
And we are pastors at Zion Lutheran Church in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And today, as we journey through Lent, we're talking about sacrificial giving.
Yeah. Way easier than fasting, in my opinion. So I'm glad we're doing this one.
Yeah. Sacrificial giving. I wonder what people think about when they think about sacrificial giving.
I love this little thing that I found. It says, sacrificial giving is giving beyond our means, not living beyond our means. So that one had me chewing on it while we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah. I found one that talked about the primary purpose of sacrifice is for worship.
Truth.
And that's why we sacrifice, because we're showing worship to God. And so, yeah. If you think about sacrifice in the Old Testament, you think about some horrible ways, horrible things, violence, horrible images, right?
Yeah.
And this one, he talks about the Apostle Paul, however, provided us with a different context for considering this term when he talks about people who give away their money cheerfully, not reluctantly or under compulsion, but because the goodness of God has taken hold of them. Even a cheerful sacrifice, however, implies giving up something.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I was telling Pastor Jim, I have this friend of mine who really taught me the power of sacrificial giving. Her name is Amy, and she wrote a book called Caterpillar to Butterfly. I used to work with her at my last church, and she was she came into Christianity later in life, once she was an adult, and she came from a horrible situation where she was abused, and there was just lots of bad stuff that had happened to her, and she got out of that situation and she found Christ. And her book is a whole journey about that. So by the time she came into our world, she was literally a mom of 2 children making $20,000 a year, and her goal was to buy a house that year. And I remember thinking, how in the world is she going to do this? And she said, well, it's easy. I'm going to just keep giving to God, and God will take care of me. And she believed this so firmly that she taught everybody around her a lesson. She just would wake up in the morning and she would say, how is God going to bless me today? And sure enough, with this belief that God wanted to take care of her, unbelievably crazy things would happen, right? Like somebody would come and mow her lawn, or somebody would shovel her driveway. And then if something bad would happen in her world, she'd say, I'm going to give more to God. Somebody needs a blessing. This is what it's telling me. And she would give and give and give, whether it was her time or her talents or her treasures, she did. And I'll be darned if I didn't watch her faith grow, her children's faith grow, and everybody around her faith grow as we witnessed how in her giving, God was always faithful in return. She was blessed to be a blessing. And it was fascinating to me. So in her book, she talks about this section in obedience. And I just want to read the Bible verse she chose and let that stew in your head. Lord, I've experienced a surprising difference in my life after surrendering everything to you. Putting my life in your hands has given me a peace and hope I have never experienced. Thank you for answering me personally. You know, being a hungry caterpillar has made me tired and weary. I want to step into all that you have for me, but the changes you are asking me to make are uncomfortable and outside my comfort zone. Even though you've shown me the benefit of obeying you, I cannot do it on my own. My selfish wants and needs easily get in the way. So thank you, God, for working in me and giving me the desire and power to do what pleases you. And it's from Philippians 3:12. So I kind of feel like sacrificial giving in this context means we can't do that on our own. We're just too selfish.
Yeah. This author talks about, this is Mark Allen Powell, and talking about giving to God, and he talks about how sacrificial giving is when we move from reasonable to radical.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so not all giving, giving our offerings to church isn't sacrifice. I mean, Mark Allen Powell talks about how that's just about what it means to be a community as we support the community and the ministry we do. Sacrifices goes above and beyond that. And so often that's with our mission partners. People sacrifice, they give to their pledge and their work here at the church, but then they go above and beyond so that our mission partners can have more of the ministry and give sacrificially to that. Yeah.
I think you need a little nudging from God to be able to give that much outside of your comfort zone, though.
Yeah.
But it's amazing because once you're stretched, I just think something happens inside. I mean, it is kind of like this caterpillar, butterfly effect.
Right.
There's such beauty in being able to give and to bless people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not always easy.
It's not. I remember the story. He talked about how he gave to the church weekly for the ministry. That was what he did. That's what it meant to be a part of the member of the congregation. But then he would want to buy something and he would not buy that item that he really wanted. And he would put it back, and that's the money then he would give sacrificially to another ministry or something else above and beyond. That's a sacrifice.
That is, because our wants and needs get in the way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 He talks about three things that giving does. And one is that we talked about it already, that sacrificial giving is an act of worship.
Yeah.
Right? Where we are giving up something of value to adore God.
For sure.
As such. Second way, money is a way of expressing our faith, an act on what we believe. And so it's really putting our faith to step forward. And the other way is they talk about sacrificial giving is a spiritual discipline. And that it frees us from the inevitable pull of materialism that draws our hearts away from God. So sacrificial giving actually allows our hearts to move. And so Jesus would talk about where your treasure is, there's your hearts will be, right? And so we have a chance to move our hearts by putting our treasure someplace else. And so when we put our treasure, our hearts follow. And so
I have one that kind of speaks to that. It says, if our hearts and our lives have not been surrendered to God as a living sacrifice, then generous giving will always be an inner struggle. So it's, this observance or dependency upon God, knowing that God gives us everything that we need. When we can actually surrender to that and believe that fully, it's easy then to sacrificially give.
Yeah.
But if you really don't believe God's going to provide for you, then human nature is to hang on tight to our treasures. Right? So that really is a reflection of what your heart is.
And faith, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, trust. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Right. Everybody wants to know how much, right? How much. And so he sets the guidelines by saying, our giving is not a sacrifice. If our giving is not a sacrifice, maybe we're not giving enough. But if we're not giving it cheerfully, maybe we're giving too much. So there's that fine line of what is sacrificial and what yet is cheerfully given. Is the kind of the finding that place that it works for us.
I think that's a good one. And I will say, like, sometimes when you take the leap and you just say, okay, fine, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to give a little bit more. And then when you feel the return on that investment, I mean, I think that's what gets me going, like, actually, this is kind of fun to see how much I can give, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, somehow God always provides on the other end then. Like when you take care of God's people, God takes care of you. I really feel that way.
Yeah. It's not always who you're giving it to, but it's the fact that you're giving.
Oh.
That's what we're called to do, is
For
to
sure.
be,
It's an obedience.
because we were created in the image of God. We talk about that. And guess who is the great giver? God. And so we follow the image of God when we are those who give.
Well, and it's really all God's to begin with. So I'm not sure why we hoard it. It belongs to God. Yeah, I read a joke, and it was saying how this guy was full of money on earth, and everybody kept saying, you can't take it with you, you can't take it with you. So he made his family promise that they would take this briefcase that had 2 gold bricks in it, 2 gold bricks, and they had to hook it to his arms when they buried him. And so the story goes that when he got to the gates of heaven, St. Peter looked at him and said, hey, what's in your briefcase there? And the guy was so proud of himself that he brought his riches with him. And he opened it up, and St. Peter looked at him and said, good, now we got ourselves a couple extra pavers. Because everything's made of gold up there. So we
Absolutely.
can't, there's no purpose in us trying to take our treasures with us.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yep.
give freely. See who you can bless.
Yeah, absolutely. We're called to be stewards.
Yeah.
Of not only the needs of whatever we have, but also the great mysteries of faith. And and that's, I think, sacrificial giving helps with the mysteries of faith.
Sure.
And how we live as faithful followers of Jesus.
Amen to that.
So, yeah. Well, blessings on your journey as you think about what sacrificial giving means to you and how you might live that out in this season of Lent.